Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Um, so I guess I have a couple of minutes before I board, and I figure I would use this time to talk on a topic which would be boundaries. We always hear people talk about, you're violating my boundaries, or they need to reinforce their boundaries, or speaking on boundaries. But what exactly does it mean to enforce your boundary? And more importantly, can boundaries be can we secure our boundaries without failure? So, from a personal point of view, a few days ago, I allowed someone into my personal space, and I felt my personal space was compromised, and I felt so disappointed in myself for allowing this person into my personal space. But in hindsight, I actually want to thank the person for coming into my personal space and violating my personal space, because without that, I wouldn't have known that I need to reinforce a certain part of my boundary. Uh, and so, boundaries, as much as we have boundaries in relationships, boundaries of what we permit to come into our airspace or personal space, and more importantly, how we um, permit people to treat us. Um, I think failure does need to happen. If failure doesn't happen, then how do you reinforce your boundary? How do you know your boundary has been compromised? I think there's a scripture that comes to mind that the little foxes ruined the vine. So how do you know the vine has been ruined? Or how do you know the little foxes have come in to ruin the vine if that territory was not uh, compromised? And so, as much as reinforcing boundaries may be um, something we all aspire to, and we look to secure our boundaries, a sense of failure is still part of it. And in a sense of failure, failure doesn't necessarily mean a moral demerit. Because sometimes we look at failure as, oh, I failed. And so there is some guilty conscience and there is a moral demerit that we attach to failure. But if you look at Edison, when he was creating a light bulb, he failed 9,999 times. If he had attached failure as a moral demerit, he probably would have stopped at the 10th time. But he kept going and kept going 9,999 times. And it was the 10,000th time that he discovered the light bulb. And so failure is not necessarily something evil or something bad. It just simply shows what was not appropriately done and what can be done better. And so if we look at it from that perspective regarding boundaries, if your boundary has been compromised, or you allowed somebody to come into your boundary and the person violated your trust or whatever the case is, rather than feel bad, rather than make it seem like something bad or something evil that has happened, it should be a learning process or a time to learn more about yourself. It's something was revealed to you to show who you are, to show a part of yourself that needs to be improved on, a part of a section of yourself that you need to work on to uh, to fortify, probably to strengthen, and maybe a part of yourself you probably are in denial of. So, in conclusion, boundaries, as much as we love to um, enforce boundaries and to define our boundaries, and we set boundaries to determine how people treat us, there's, the only time you will know how to improve on your boundary is when failure happens, when somebody comes in and violates it. And it's not a time to cut people off and slice people up, "Oh, I'm not going to forgive you," or whatever the case is. Well, I'm not going to tell you how to treat people, but what you should learn, what you should focus on is yourself, how to refortify that area, and not necessarily take that failure as something immoral demerit. Yeah, thanks.